You're so
no.
quiet. You're so
And I
quiet.
don't even know what it is. Like,
There we go. There we go. That's better. That's better.
okay,
That's better.
Leave it there.
Yeah.
That's a lot
You
better.
just have to put your mic where your mouth is.
that could be a good idea, right?
Don't eat it.
How about you, Zach? What do you sound like?
I sound good. I'm having a succulent Chinese meal tonight. Am I coming through okay?
Succulent Chinese meal. I'm gonna change the name of the
How
show
succulent.
right now. Hold on. Succulent. How do you spell succulent?
Alexa, how do you spell succulent?
Come on, man.
Show right now.
This is all Zach's content. Whenever we throw a question,
Vaya trolacos, tío. Están troleando haciendo los test de audio y tal.
Alright, you guys ready to start?
Yep.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's go to the title. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Star Citizen Live, a succulent Chinese meal. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee, and that joke won't make any sense if you're watching the YouTube replay. If you've never seen Star Citizen Live before, it's where we take about an hour out of the end of our week and hang out with some of our developers, talk a little bit about the things they work on. Sometimes we show a little bit of the things they work on.
Bueno, como siempre está explicando lo que es el Star Citizen Live, que viene siendo pues una charla con los desarrolladores un poco más abierta en directo sobre pues, temas del desarrollo, temas que tienen que ver con el desarrollo de Star Citizen, que pueden involucrar conocer a personas que trabajan o características que están desarrollando con grupos de trabajo que están trabajando en esa mecánica, ¿no?
And feature teams. Let's take a look at them now. Here they are. We've got JJ. JJ's this way. We've got Zach. We've got Joas. And we've got Declan. How you doing, guys?
hello.
Good.
Yeah,
Very well,
good.
thank you. How are you, Jared?
I'm getting by. I still got my super swank fashion hoodie, which is available, which will be available in the Star Citizen merchandise store. I think later today as part of the IAE festivities. So, sometimes I shill stuff. Thank you for making it so easy
Pro-modeling.
for me.
Now I want one.
Today we're talking about FPS content and features. Before we get started, for some of you, it is your first time ever on the show. So let's take a few minutes and introduce yourselves.
Estoy hablando que la sudadera está disponible en la tienda, luego la veremos a ver.
For Star Citizen.
Hi, so I am Johan Holmer, but everyone around me here calls me Jois. And I am a senior FPS technical designer working on the weapon feature team. Some of the features that I've been working on is the attachment menu and the tractor beam. Glad to be here on.
Este señor está trabajando en el rayo tractor y en los anclajes de las armas FPS.
I'm a FPS system designer 3, and I've been working a lot with armor lately, movement systems, doing a little bit of that. Doors, which are not a fun topic, won't talk about them today. They're horrible. But yeah, overall good.
Doors. It is a...
Otro chaval que está trabajando, Declan, está trabajando en puertas y dice que son horribles, que es un infierno.
The 1,000-yard stare show up into any systems designer. You said FPS systems designer 3?
Right.
You're the first 3 we've had on the show.
To be fair, I think it's kind of like a new... Like, I only changed to the 3 recently, even though like the role is still the same. But yeah, it's kind of like
That's part of
better
the
than 2, isn't it?
Well, I mean, anybody else a 2? I don't want to crap on somebody. You know, Zach's gonna be like, I'm a 2. You know?
I'm 3.5.
Zach's a 3. Zach's
Okay.
Oh, come on, man, don't do that.
No, I've had 6 or 7 titles here, so at least no Roman numerals at the end. Zach, who are you and what do you do for Star Citizen?
I am an FPS system designer 3 as well, and what I've been doing recently, I've been the juice guy. We've been making the weapons feel great, making the oomph, making the bangs, just making them as fun as possible to use. I'm going to mention some of that soon.
Where's those cool sunglasses you had before?
Oh, they're on the floor somewhere, like most of them.
Wait, you
Oh,
on the
no.
Take them for
floor?
drop them.
Bueno, esto, la parte de la presentación no vamos a esperar que se presenten y tal, pero a ver si va al salseo, porque están medio troleando, medio tal.
It's part of my floor wardrobe. This is how it's what we have to wear when we're making.
La verdad que siempre es un placer ver cómo, en realidad, como un equipo de trabajo se divierte. O sea, me refiero, hacen su trabajo y a la vez pues tienen ese cachondeillo, ¿no? definitivamente yo creo que es bueno para un ambiente de trabajo.
You know what? You should see the ones that the 4 wear. You know those giant like inflatable ones? When you get to 4, that's what you get. But we're limited. I'm limited by my power at the moment by being.
They're actually
these ones.
they're locked away in the office. Like not everyone's
Yeah.
allowed access to those. So
They're too powerful if you walk around the office with them.
JJ,
I haven't even been given a 3.
Like I said, 3.5.
It's not fair, is it?
JJ, no stranger to Star Citizen Live. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, I'm Johnny Savicius. I'm the lead FPS system designer, and I
Bueno, este es el mandamás en el diseño de FPS.
and more like we're working on a bunch of systems going forward. So we're going to talk about a lot of those today. So I won't get into it.
Yes, and we will get into it so that Lucky 13 can relax in the chat. We'll get to it, Lucky. This is my time. It's my time. All right, so as usual, we collect questions from the community on Spectrum, our bespoke communication platform available on robertspaceindustrials.com, where we let people submit their questions and then vote up which ones they want to see answered most, and then remove.
Está comentando eso, de que las preguntas, cada vez que salgo en Star Citizen Live, fueron unas preguntas en Spectrum, ¿no? Donde podemos preguntar cosas al desarrollo, también se pueden preguntar cosas en el directo, pero bueno, a través del Spectrum, pues las preguntas votadas, pues obtienen respuestas si consideran a bien responderlas, porque tienen que tener relación con el tema que están tratando, ¿no?
We're going to start with probably the biggest question, the question that was on most people's minds in the chat. Hand salvage. And this is an important distinction. There's salvage, and then there's ship salvage, and then there's hand salvage. And since you are
Chatarra, dice que hay chatarra de mano, chatarra de naves, chatarra de componentes. ¿Qué pasa con la chatarra de mano?
salvage look like?
Sure, I can take this one. So basically, this is what we're calling hull stripping, which is the first tier of implementation of salvage, basically. So, yeah, hand salvage. But what is hull stripping? So hull stripping is essentially you are using either the multi-tool or a dedicated tool to get to a ship or a derelict or anything in that, in kind of like that vein, and you're basically using the tool to strip away material that then you're taking on board and storing in a canister. For the very first implementation, it will be a very generic material that is just kind of like munging everything off the ship that you're taking off it, that you're stripping away. And
Vale, para esta primera interacción lo que van a meter es el hull stripping, que es desarmar el casco. Desarmar el casco con una pistola, vamos a pasar y vamos a recoger un material que al principio va a ser un material... o sea, va a ser un material muy básico, que luego, pues a medida que la tecnología vaya avanzando, pues se van a meter mejoras y variaciones en ese tipo de material. Y además, pues el retirar ese material del casco, lo que es la chapa, pues también se podrá poner otra vez, ¿no?
And you kind of see the skeleton underneath using the damage map system that we've got. And yeah, you're pulling that away into a generic material that you can then use for repairing as well. So what will that look like? So when you strip away, like I say, we'll be using the damage map system, and what we're planning on doing is when you go to repair, you'll be basically patching the holes caused by damage and restoring the kind of metals.
Claro, lo que quieren hacer es que en un principio pues veremos lo que es la estructura del casco por el nivel de daño que tienen, el sistema de nivel de daño que tienen implementado en el juego, y para reparar lo que hacemos básicamente pues es utilizar un material para poder rellenar los agujeros que haya en el casco.
Filling like holes in their ship, like they've had a, you know, like a bad day at the dentist almost. Yeah, actually the basic functionality that we're doing for FPS we're going to be using on the...
Ha dicho rellenar los agujeros como un mal día en el dentista. Ahí lo dejo quedar.
Kind of strip on a much larger scale compared to FPS. But obviously, as Jared said, this is just the very, very first layer of salvage. The next iteration actually of hand salvage will be to start stripping individual materials from ships. So very similar to kind of what we've done with the recent medical UI, is when you look at a ship, you'll be able to get some readouts on kind of what the integrity of the hull is, which you can kind of...
Claro, dice que al principio que tendremos esa parte básica de simplemente rellenar agujeros, poner agujeros, sacar un material básico. Luego se irá implementando a tener materiales más complejos y además a una funcionalidad parecida a eso que tenemos en medicina, en el poder ver los tipos de daños o daño estructural que puede haber en la nave en un mapa que no, o sea, que en un mapeo que nos diga las incidencias que hay en la nave, ¿no?
From a ship, the UI will obviously tell you what you're looking at, what you'll be gathering, and that will be like an additional complexity to, like, if I repair my ship with this substance, I will get more of its integrity back if I'm repairing the wing with the correct thing, basically. So that's kind of the next iteration of hand salvage. And then further down the line, obviously, we're going to build on that for the ships, which is kind of like the cutting off parts and taking those on and cutting away and using the muncher that we've got on the reclaimer, for example. That will be coming down the line as well. So I just want to stress that this is the very first kind of like dive into salvage that we're going to have.
Claro, dice que incluso en el futuro pues podremos recortar partes de la nave con naves más gordas que como con una Reclaimer que irá viniendo poco a poco a medida que vayamos desarrollando el Salvage.
This universal material, but it'll be able to strip faster, has a higher capacity and stuff. Whereas down the line, that will be using the kind of separated material functionality that we've just talked about. And then I did steal another question. I'm sorry, Jared. I stole another question from because I read through the Spectrum thread. Someone did mention, can we remove components and weapons from ships and we'll be able to sell them? I did want to cover that because that's something that we're looking into as a bit of a stretch goal for Tier 0, where we want to do it, we just want to find the best way to do it. So if
Está leyendo a través del Spectrum, que otra pregunta que quiero responder de paso es que si vamos a poder retirar un arma o componentes de la nave y poder venderlos y dice que ahora mismo que estamos en una parte muy básica del asunto, pero dice que sí, que queremos hacer eso, pero no sabemos todavía cómo queremos hacerlo porque queremos hacerlo de la manera adecuada. Queremos encontrar una manera adecuada para poder hacer ese sistema de retirar un componente y vender, ¿no?
There's a lot of the things that are done in the first person, like medical stuff like that, are beams. It's switch an attachment, switch an item, shoot a beam at a thing. Shoot a beam, it heals a thing. Shoot a beam, it salvages a thing. Shoot a beam, it repairs a thing. Why is that? Let's talk a little bit about why in a game of this size and scope are these things, beams, and like why aren't we making like Operation? is you get what I'm saying? Get where I'm going with this? It's like,
vale, pero dices cuando hay muchos rayos para hacer cosas, un rayo médico para curar, rayo para salvar, rayo tal. ¿Por qué hay muchos rayos a la hora de utilizar esto y por qué no hay una operación real? Preguntáis colando.
Put that on something like the multi-tool, which is a very good base for swapping in and out attachments, changing the functionality of it, and kind of getting the very first level of each of these mechanics in there. So when I talk about salvage, for example, the multi-tool, the iteration that we're putting in now, which is the very simplest form of salvage, is always what the multi-tool is going to do. It's not going to do anything more than that, but everything extrapolated out from that will be more. Like, for example, being able to take weapons off ships, for example, cutting bits off and putting them in your reclaimer, going selling ship parts and stuff like that. That will all come down the line. So I think there's obviously, if people are saying that everything feels a bit beamy at the moment, it's because it's a lot simpler. It's a much simpler interaction than what it's going to be down the line, when there's going to be a lot more considerations to kind of like take it.
Está comentando de que ahora mismo pues todo tiene rayos porque el rayo es una buena base para la que partir para muchas de las mecánicas que se están implementando. La multitool va a funcionar de esa manera, es la idea de que sea un rayo que haga cosas en sus diferentes variantes y que será pues la forma básica de poder interactuar con algunas de las mecánicas que hay en el verso. Entonces, que a partir de ahí pues empezará a complicarse más la cosa y empezará a haber otro tipo de mecánicas más complejas refiriéndose a hacer más cosas que simplemente rayo por todos lados, ¿no?
Is on there, but an advanced user or a medical practitioner will be going over to the advanced side, moving all the sliders around, checking all the symptoms, all the issues that they've got with them, and making some informed decisions based off that. Now, in terms of like why beams, obviously, if we wanted to make this a bit more visceral and up close, we're going to end up taking a lot of control away from the player. So if it was, say, for example, Jared, you were down on the floor and you were wiggling around on the floor, and I was trying to get hold of you, we would both have to be locked into place for that entire process, which both might make both of us like vulnerable. For example, taking control away from the player is obviously sometimes appropriate, but doing it all the time for a lot of these different mechanics makes things a lot more difficult. So obviously it's a bit nicer to keep player control in, keep people at range, and just kind of have like almost beam or range devices that let us do some of these kind of perform some of these systems.
The control thing is where I was hoping you were going to go with that. It's in a multiplayer game, losing control of your character is probably one of the least favorite things that can happen. But in a massively multiplayer game, where when people can start prompts with you, it's like, oh look, I'm going to try to heal you, or I'm going to try, and it just stops you, and it's in order for the animations to match up, like this person's going to grab you and they're going to rip open your thing or whatever, and now your character is just stuck while somebody else is essentially playing and in control of your person, is a very uncomfortable and not very enjoyable experience. So the beam
Claro, una de las cosas que está diciendo Discord, que está haciendo también el JJ, ¿no? Es precisamente dice que el tema del rayo tractor también da la posibilidad de poder tener control del personaje en todo momento al estar haciendo la mecánica. Si nosotros estamos jugando a alguien con el rayo, seleccionar y tal, tenemos control sobre nuestro personaje y no estamos anclados a una acción que precisamente, bueno, ya sabéis que en el espacio tarkoviano, es decir, en el Star Citizen, cuando tenemos que lotear y demás, el estar ahí anclado y estar pendiente de algo o haciendo una iteración de medicina y tal, pues es un riesgo y además es poco placentera para el jugador por los riesgos que supone realmente de que estás ahí atrapado en eso y que los rayos hacen más fluido lo que es el tema del gameplay en ese sentido para no suponer tanto riesgo para el jugador a la hora de estar haciendo una asistencia médica.
Obviously came across as we've been playing the game because we all play too, right? And
U otras
we're
actividades,
doing a
¿no?
lot of testing with the new inventory system and looting objects off bodies and trying to take individual armor pieces off or individual grenades off. And obviously, with the way our physicalized kind of inventory works with like the attachments, it's quite difficult sometimes trying to get hold of the one that you want because the floating text appears. And that was always something that was not the permanent solution. So we have something called the personal interaction system and the personal interaction system wheel that we want to implement down the line, which is essentially when you're hovering over some of these items, they will highlight like they do now, but you're not going to automatically get all the interactions appear on them. What we're going to do is we're going to implement a essential default item action for every item in the game based off the state that it's currently in. So for example, if something's on the floor, you can go over to it, highlight it, click it, it will pick it up. That's probably what most people want to do with something's on the floor. They want to get it in their hands and look at it. We'll be setting all of those individually, but that is also something that is flexible for players to be able to set their own default item actions for different types of items. So for example, if they wanted to, I don't know if this is possible, but say like every time they see a grenade on the floor, they want to throw it when they just click on it, then they will obviously automatically pick it up and throw it like immediately. Or if they want to change their default item action of like if I see a magazine.
Está comentando una cosa interesante que bueno, que el tema de interactuar con los objetos, de por ejemplo de un cuerpo que esté en el suelo o de un objeto que esté en el suelo, quieren simplificar la jugabilidad para los jugadores en el sentido de que cuando nosotros se nos proponga una opción para poder interactuar con ese objeto, en vez de tener una ristra de opciones cada vez que hagamos un objeto, que haya unas opciones por defecto y que además podamos configurar esas opciones a nuestro gusto. En el sentido de que si nosotros tenemos una granada en el suelo, pues podamos tener la opción de que ya simplemente sea, nos tiran una granada en el momento que esté en ese estado, agarrar y tirar de golpe. Que nosotros podamos configurar la opción por defecto que nos salga ya para dar F rápidamente, ¿sabes? Y que haga la acción, ¿no? En caso de que tengamos un objeto en el suelo, pues ya que por defecto, pues el jugador que va a hacer con eso, pues va a interactuar con él. No necesita un montón de opciones más ensuciando lo que es la experiencia, ¿no?
Distinction between laser energy and plasma energy.
Yeah, I can start this off at least and just say that there's definitely upside and downside of each of the ballistic weapons that we want to kind of like touch on. So ballistic weapons, you've obviously got limited ammo. Generally, in a lot of cases, our ballistic magazines are more limited in capacity compared to the batteries. Zach has been reviewing some of that as part of the weapon audit as well. But basically, in short, like ballistic weapons, you get a bit less ammo, but you can go out in the field and you can scavenge. We've obviously got a system coming in at some point, I think we've detailed before, which is mag stripping. So you'll be able to take ammunition for other magazines, put it in your magazine, and you'll be able to use that ammunition going forward. Eventually, when we get some of the suit systems, the powered suit systems, the idea is that you'd be able to potentially trickle charge like your energy batteries. So they're a bit more versatile in that it might take a while to recharge, but over time, like if you're on like a long kind of like expedition or whatever, and you occasionally get into combat, then they should be trickle charging off your suit and taking power away from your suit to be able to kind of like keep up on that. So they're a bit better for like a longer engagement kind of situation. But then there are some additional downsides to energy weapons, because that sounds like a big bonus, right? I've got energy that keeps coming back to my batteries, which kind of comes into like wear and overheat, which is something that Deck's actually been looking at.
Yeah, so if we touch about wear for a second, when a weapon shoots, it'll generate wear, and then that's for all weapons. But for energy weapons, they can overheat if you shoot too much. So, for example, plasma weapons, they might heat up really quickly, and then they would cool down really quickly. Laser weapons, they might take a little longer to heat up and then cool down slower. We're always going to have the environment that the player is in, impact the cooling down. If you're on a freezing planet, you would expect it to cool down quicker.
Bueno, está comentando un par de cosas interesantes. Primero, reforzar lo que habían dicho en un principio, de que efectivamente pues la diferencia fundamental ahora mismo entre balístico y láser es que el láser pues tiene más munición que el balístico. El balístico eventualmente podremos recoger municiones de otros cargadores y ponerlo la munición en nuestros cargadores. Sí que es cierto que en el futuro, pues cuando estén implementados los sistemas de energía de los trajes, de que eso que se estuvieron hablando, de nosotros podremos recargar las baterías en nuestro traje y poder en las baterías de energía y con el tiempo poder recargar que se vayan recargando esas baterías despacio, ¿no? Y que está pensado, sería ideal para situaciones de una exploración larga o demás, que tengamos combate ocasional, pues para poder ir recuperando esa energía. Aparte de eso, pues hay otro tipo de situaciones en el caso de que es el sobrecalentamiento de las armas. En el caso está hablando del caso de las armas láser, que tendrían, por ejemplo, un calentamiento lento, pero también un enfriamiento lento. En el caso de las armas de plasma, sería pues calentamiento rápido, pero al mismo tiempo también enfriamiento rápido. Y que esto también se vería afectado por las condiciones ambientales en las que estamos, ¿no? Si estamos en una zona que hace mucho frío, pues el enfriamiento de las armas se vería afectado por esta característica.
The lower durability, the more likely they are, and the more severe they would be. With dirt, the dirtier your weapon is, the more wear it would gain.
Aquí está hablando de otro tipo de cosa, que además es el wearing, que es el desgaste de las armas. Todas las armas tendrán un desgaste. Evidentemente, cuando las armas se sobrecalientan, pues se incrementará ese ratio de desgaste. Y aparte está diciendo de que la suciedad de las armas, ¿no? Si tú tienes un arma sucia, incrementará la velocidad a la que ese arma se desgasta.
When your item receives damage, a percentage of the damage will also be applied as wear. So you can't have like a 100 durability weapon that has 10 HP. Like, it doesn't really make sense. They'll kind of trickle down. But yeah, with dirt, like the biome and the weather that you're in will impact the amount of dirt you gain over time. If you're in a space station, it's a clean environment. You wouldn't expect to generate too much dirt at all. If you dropped your weapon on the ground, that would be a little bit of dirt. If you're going prone, that movement, more dirt, that kind of thing. And of course, we'll have ways to which player they can clean their weapon, they can clean themselves, they can restore whatever durability has been lost. So.
Yeah, it is core. It's kind of a system that will add to the tapestry of the PU, where it's just like everything you find isn't always going to be pristine anymore. It'll be like, I open a loot box and I find this weapon. This weapon almost has its own history to it. You found it, it's worn.
Claro, está diciendo de que efectivamente se acabó el hecho de... O sea, la suciedad de las armas también va a depender del entorno en el que estamos. Nosotros estamos en una estación espacial, se supone que es un ambiente limpio, que no vamos a tener esa suciedad en el arma. Nosotros estamos en el suelo, estamos arrastrándonos y tal, pues la suciedad de ese arma, o sea, el bioma en el que estemos, va a influir a lo que es el tipo de suciedad que va a tener el arma. Aparte de eso, tendremos la habilidad de poder limpiar tanto el traje, como limpiar nosotros mismos, como limpiar las armas que llevemos, como repararlas también. Y también está comentando el hecho de que...
Yeah, so misfires will definitely be a thing. If we use weapons as the example again, is the easiest one. We've currently, we're doing like 3 categories of misfires: minor, major, and critical. A minor one would be a dry fire. A major one would be, it jammed and you need to clear it, and then the critical one would be the weapon pretty much blows up in your hands, it falls apart and...
What the fuck. Vale, están comentando el tema del loteo, que ya se acabó el encontrar un botín y que de repente esté totalmente pristino en el verso. Si tú encuentras una caja perdida en medio de una jungla, por ejemplo, pues la vas a encontrar llena de llena de mierda, ¿no? Pero bueno, que va a estar el arma en las condiciones que esté, o esa arma puede tener una historia de suciedad o tal, que no la vas a encontrar perfectamente nueva ahí, ¿no? Luego también están comentando el hecho de cuáles son los posibles fallos que puede tener un arma. Pues efectivamente, una de las fallas que puede tener es que se encasquille el arma, que eso va a ser una posibilidad, dependiendo pues, de la suciedad, el desgaste y tal. Y otra que de repente pues te revienten las manos y el arma pues sea completamente destruida, ¿no?
Negatively to the idea, especially in a game that has permadeath. Let's remember that, this isn't a thing where you drop prone once and your thing drops 10%. No. It's like this. It's like we said after the future of space combat thing. You take it to the point of realism, you convert it to the point of believability, then you bring it back to the point of fun. So it's a thing that will be constantly balanced and constantly adjusted, and even...
Claro, está recordando Escolando que bueno, que primero se lleva a lo que es el realismo, luego a lo que es creíble y luego se vuelve a traer a lo que es el punto de lo jugable. O sea, que es una constante interacción que llevar un arma no va a ser un asunto de cirujano, ¿no? Pero bueno, que va a tener su rollo. O sea, eso sí.
Chance, let's see, look for the chat here. Any chance we can get a fireman carry instead of just body dragging? This person really wants to chuck people over their shoulders, I guess.
Yeah, so we have talked about this actually, because obviously we do have the body drag for moving people around, but that's kind of more what we envisioned that as is that was more of a short range and quick action of say like you're in a firefight, one of your buddies has gone down and you want to get them to cover, you can kind of very quickly run out, grab them, pull them away while being able to kind of like fire off with your pistol a little bit. But the fireman carry is probably going to be something that's going to be better for long range. So like if
Están comentando el hecho de que, bueno, de que vamos a estar siempre arrastrando los cuerpos o vamos a poder cargar a un tío a los hombros, ¿no? Y dice, pues bueno, que sí, que en principio, efectivamente, el tema de arrastrar cuerpos, el drag body, está solo pensado para acciones de corto alcance, pero para más allá, para acciones que sean de larga distancia, están planteando efectivamente que se puede cargar un herido a hombros, ¿no?
Loop that we've got, especially against AI. Again, body drag's really good for just dragging a body around, behind a dumpster or whatever and hiding it. But if we eventually want to do things like hiding a body in things, we're going to need some way to get them up on us and put them in. So, or put them over a railing or something like that. So we've talked about this as an option and it's something that we definitely want to do in the future.
Yeah, cool. People are freaking out about twerking. Yeah, I'll talk to Steve Bender. And he'll do it if I ask. So y'all better behave in chat.
You mean just do it, or do it for the game?
Both. Jois, let's talk a bit about hacking. We've seen hacking on the roadmap a couple of times. It's pushed for a couple of various reasons. We're not going to get into that. But about hacking as the features, about how it's going to work. Describe to us where we're going, what our intentions are with hacking.
Descríbenos cuáles son las intenciones, cuál es el camino a seguir en el hackeo, qué están haciendo, ¿no?
Be able to hack, to take control over. You know it better than I do, so talk to us about hacking.
Yes, so hacking is a very exciting feature, at least in my opinion. So currently how the hacking that's implemented in the PU work right now is you basically go and you buy a chip, and then somewhere in the universe you find like this chip slot of like a hackable computer that you insert the chip into, and it's basically a timer that ticks down and it's got a chance to jam, so you need to restart it. And what we wanted to do with hacking, moving on from that, the current implementation, is that we wanted to introduce some more engaging gameplay when it comes to hacking. So we've explored a bunch of different concepts, and we've had a long period of experimentation and playing around with different ideas internally in the design team. So what we have right now for what hacking is going to be, we're going to add this hacking device, which is going to be something that you can equip in your hand, and then we're going to still keep those chips, which basically works like the ammo for the hacking device. So you have the hacking device in your hand, and there's going to be these things in the world that you can hack. You go up to them, interact with them, and they connect wirelessly. And you're going to see this 3D visualization of a network. You're going to be able to move around at this network and also manipulate the network to open up new paths and new routes. And
está diciendo, ahora mismo el hackeo funciona con un chip que tú metes y tienes que esperar un tiempo a que desatore y ya está. Ya sabéis cómo funciona el hacking, me habéis visto sacar la criminalidad muchas veces. Entonces lo que está diciendo es que el camino que van a seguir después de haber explorado varias ideas es que tú vas a tener un dispositivo en la mano y el chip se va a seguir usando en la otra mano y vas a funcionar como la munición. Y entonces tú con ese dispositivo, como una comunicación wireless sin cables, vas a poder ver cosas hackeables en tu entorno. Y una vez tú te conectes podrás ver un mapa de una red en la que tú vas en 3 dimensiones, en la que vamos a poder interactuar y abrir caminos o cerrar caminos en esa red, ¿no?
Hacking harder. And that leads us into like difficulty scaling. So there's gonna be like varying ranges from like the easier hacks. They might be smaller and very quick to complete, very straightforward. And then on systems that have more antivirus, like a higher antivirus level present, is going to be quite a hard challenge for the players to finish the hacks. We also have a way to play this hacking game through a command prompt. So you're basically going to be able to, in addition to the normal control scheme, you're going to be able to type commands which control the hacking.
What the fuck. Bueno, aparte de lo que es ese puzzle gigante en el que podemos mover una red de manera holográfica para poder hacer cosas, y va a haber diferentes tipos de niveles de dificultad, siendo pues aquellos sistemas que tienen sistemas antivirus, ¿no? Gordos, pues serán más difíciles. Aparte de eso, podremos escribir código para hackear los sistemas. O sea, podremos utilizar códigos.
Well, you're hacking in order to gain access to a system or part of a system that you previously didn't have access to. So what could that be? Like the most straightforward example is a door. You know, there's a door, it's locked, you don't have security access, you hack it, bam, now it's open and it opens up a new path, or maybe a room that contains valuable loot, or whatever the level designers come up with. Mainly it's going to be like, or secondly, it could be like computers or terminals which control other systems, like gravity could be a cool thing that it controls, or yeah.
Claro, al final que puedes acceder a diferentes sistemas o computadoras que controlen otros sistemas, como puede ser gravedades, puertas, que te abran una puerta oculta, donde, o sea, una zona donde esté sellada, que haya un botín, o los contenedores también pueden requerir controles de carga, ¿no? Para poder abrirlos.
Someone's ship, and that leads us onto the PvP aspect of hacking, which basically, if someone's hacking your chip, you're gonna get a notification that there's someone's trying to gain access to your system, and you can actually go in and take manual control over the antivirus system and try to, hopefully, you'll do a better job than the antivirus AI would.
Claro, está comentando de que pues de cara al futuro, otra cosa que puede ser hackear una nave. Entonces, en el caso de que hackeas una nave, de que te estén hackeando una nave, tú recibirás una notificación de te están hackeando, aprieta el culo, podrás tomar control natural del antivirus, o sea, del antivirus, y poder contrarrestar ese ataque y esperando que tú lo hagas mejor de lo que la persona está intentando, o sea, del intruso, ¿no? El intruso que te está intentando fastidiar, pues que tú seas capaz de defenderte de su ataque. Mediante todo ese rollo, el mapa de la red, tal, el tema de escribir código para contrarrestar el hackeo, madre mía.
And you don't know, you aren't aware of where everything is. You're trying to discover it and find all of these routes, and you're trying to create these networks. And obviously, at the same time, on the other side, the antivirus doesn't know where you are, and they're constantly searching for you. So it's a very, like Joe said, it's a very like a kind of like the bottom end. It's a very quick little puzzle that you can kind of get through. Like if I was trying to get on your ship, Jared, and you lock the door, that might be, you know, you bought a cheap ship, for example. You know, I can get in really easy with this little puzzle. You might get a warning that I'm on the ship, but then if you were say like, you know, you're on an Idris and I was trying to hack into your systems and like start interrupting your shields and stuff, that would be like the, you know, we're in a big network here. I'm really having.
Claro, o sea, una cosa sería hackear una puerta, que sería un puzzle sencillo mientras sistema, y otro rollo sería intentar hackear los escudos de una Idris, que ahí ya viene el taco gordo y ya viene una red gorda. O sea, realmente tiene una pintaza de la hostia el hackeo, ¿eh? Pero una pintaza, ¡buf!
We really wanted to kind of sell a hacking fantasy in a visual format that people will quite easily understand, but also we wanted to cater for people who want to use something like the command prompt for the true like hacking feel, and there is definitely scope there to kind of utilize both and take advantage of either side. So I fully imagine like a power player of hacking would be like almost making like macros for the command prompt and hitting those and gaining the benefits from that while he's like selecting things on the map at the same time using the visual interface. So I'm very, very
Dice, me imagino el día de mañana un jugador que se configure macros para poder tener código rápido a la vez de que está fijándose en lo que es el mapa, en el mapa 3D que tiene de la red y combinar esas dos técnicas para tener ya, digamos, ya códigos preparados para ya poder atacar ese tipo de cosas, ¿no? Ese tipo de nivel de jugador que espera que se vea y que es algo que realmente le entusiasma mucho, ¿no? Ese rollo.
Can we please get a select all so that we can drag all the loot all at one time from one storage to another, so we don't have to continuously drag one item at a time, like a I'm not going to say that word. So what do you think? Select all?
Yeah, we've talked about doing a move all basically. We know how many items people are managing in some of these in some of the inventories they've got in locations or the bigger ships. So it's just part of more ongoing improvements, right? Because this is the very first iteration of inventory that just went out. It was a pretty big undertaking for us, and there are just more improvements to come down the line. Like we want to add a search feature in future. So like obviously you've got your filters at the moment. This would basically be a search filter like you'd expect from kind of any search filtering system. But it basically like, you know, I know I've got a P6LR in here somewhere, so I'm going to type P6LR. It'll filter everything else out, and it's there, so you can very quickly find what you want. You could even potentially type like pistol, and it'll search for any pistols. You can do that. So it's just another quick like way that you can kind of filter through your inventory. Stuff like visual improvement, so improve the lighting on the character, highlighting them when the camera's like behind a wall or kind of like behind a counter or something like that. That's something else we want to do. Even things like showing tooltips on the tooltips themselves, showing what's attached to it. So it's like if I have a weapon with a suppressor and
Que al final está hablando un poco de eso, de que dice, vamos a tener que seguir arrastrando los objetos de uno a uno todo el rato y tal, los inventarios. El inventario tiene mucho que mejorar, es un proceso que están en ello, o sea, de mejorar las cosas, como por ejemplo, pues quieren implementar también lo que es el tema de poder hacer búsquedas, en general de que el inventario, pues la interacción se mejore, cosas como por ejemplo cuando terminamos el arma, poder qué tipo de componentes tiene anclados ese arma y poder hacer cosas con eso, ¿no? O sea, que todavía hay mucho espacio, mucho camino de mejora en el inventario, ¿no? Que estamos en la primera iteración. E incluso también los efectos visuales o incluso el tema de las cámaras, que es algo que también tienen en cuenta, que saben que cuando nos acercamos a un muro, cuando estamos a un sitio que hay ese problema de que no se ve bien el personaje, ¿no? Y que quieren hacer cosas con respecto a eso, ¿no? De mejorar también esa visual a la hora de darle a la I, ¿no?
You have multiple new ammo types on the roadmap. Could you elaborate on what they will be at this time?
Yes, so we have a couple of cool ones. We've got plasma and fire, incendiary. Even it's basically they were more like a damage over time, so you could inflict some sort of damage, and then maybe there's an additional dot. And eventually, we kind of want to work that into a more, we could play into some of our systems. Like, hey, if you've got fire, it could interact with this. If you've got plasma, it could interact like this. So, for example, if you had an LMG which had incendiary rounds, you could provide suppressing fire on an area. If you shot at the ground in this scenario, the ground could then end up, catching fire. So if you want to push someone out of cover, if you want to shoot plasma at the ground near them, that could end up, causing these hazard zones essentially. So you've got this really cool, fun way of forcing players out of their situation. We've got so many cool ideas that we're brewing up these kind of things that we're really excited to get these damage types in and make them meaningful. So, the difference between having incendiary and ballistic and so on and so forth is actually relevant. We're also working on something called disarray, which ties into a lot more systems that come out later. So, interacting with the player's armor and their power system and stuff like that. But obviously, that's a bit further away.
All right.
Yeah.
it's worth noting that will work on the ships right now, because obviously we've got the electromagnetic weapons that they use, and you can take the ships down without causing damage to them. Disarray is a very similar version of that, but it's kind of like trickling that damage in over time.
Yeah.
Vale, están diciendo de que, bueno, quieren meter pues el tema de distorsión, una especie de daño de distorsión cuando las armaduras tengan plantas de energía y demás igual. Quieren meter ese tema también al FPS, también el tema de las armas de la munición incendiaria o la munición de plasma, pues que la munición de plasma como que genera un dot y el fuego, pues obviamente pues ya sabéis lo que hace. Y en el hecho de que pues que tengamos una ametralladora ligera, pues que podamos echar a alguien de la cobertura a base de incendiarle la zona alrededor, por ejemplo, que están explorando ese tipo de cosas para pues para poder hacer realmente diferencia a la hora de tener ese tipo de municiones en el juego, ¿no?
More meaningful and impactful than compared to the bearing pistol and so on and so forth. we're gonna obviously when we make these changes, we're very considerate of how the weapon looks and how it feels. So that will come with like a whole new recoil for it and some art changes like extending the magazine. Some other examples of how we're making like sidearms more interesting is the arc-like pistol that's going to be potentially turned into a 3-round burst rifle. Not rifle, sorry, 3-round burst pistol. You know, just to kind of get that variety up, and you know, people who like burst pistols and stuff, they've got something to play with. And you know, kind of going further than that, we talk about this weapon audit. We're looking at all our FPS weapons and how they can be improved. So, for example, sniper rifles, when you're aiming down the sights and you fire and you pull the bolt, it can judder a bit and not look as great as we want it to be. So we're really looking at this kind of stuff to make them feel better. But I mean, as far as the weapon audit goes, it's pretty all-encompassing at the moment. You know, we've been doing competitive analysis of different titles, slowing their stuff frame by frame down, looking at real life, you know, to understand where that, you know, that weapon juice comes from, because we have this great roster of weapons, but we want them to feel like they're in a game that's...
Claro, están hablando de que pues ahora mismo pues tienen un gran número de armas, pero están mirando pues otros títulos, incluso la vida real también, ¿no? Para poder tener referencias, para poder sacar ese jugo, dar esa sensación de realmente de perfeccionar lo que es por ejemplo, el recargar la recámara cuando tengamos un rifle francotirador, de mejorar esa visibilidad, el tema de las pistolas. Quieren hacer un repaso de todas las armas para poder pues meter esa inmersión en el juego, ¿no? Sacar a relucir esa inmersión, sacarle todo el juego a las armas, y que pues actualmente hay muchas cosas que están en concepto, pues eso, en revisión de recibir inspiración de cualquier lugar que sea posible para poder traer esas sensaciones al verso.
That's, you know, it's a cluey weapon, which is, you know, it's our all-around weapon. So it's like, well, this could be a burst weapon, right? It's purely a burst weapon. But then we say it has a 3-round burst and a 5-round burst. 5-round burst, obviously, you know, bit heavier recoil, bit longer downtime compared to the 3-round burst, but it gives you that like active choice as a player to do something interesting. Then we look at like the Lumen 5. That's a 5-round burst SMG, I believe, currently. But we're looking at, you know, we want to make that like far more interesting and give it a bit of uniqueness. So we say, yes, this is a burst SMG, but you can tap down the trigger because the actual downtime of the burst is a lot lower. So it's like you can basically get it going full auto, but it is essentially a burst SMG.
Claro, están hablando de que tengas la Lumin, por ejemplo, o sea, de sacarle más... quieren dar más opciones a los jugadores, o que las armas pues tengan más complejidad, en el sentido de, bueno, pues tener diferentes modos de disparo, o por ejemplo, en el caso de la Lumin, que es un arma de burst, que mete ráfagas, ¿no? Pues quieren hacer que tú, en realidad, cuando tú estás disparando el gatillo, metes un tiro, ¿vale? Pero lo que quieren hacer es que tú estás gatillo, que en realidad que haga fuego continuado, que no se detenga, ¿no? Que es como que darle la siguiente orden de cola, ¿no?
Which isn't kind of what we want, and we're looking at that and like, you know, how can we make a cluey sniper rifle more interesting, basically. Yeah, so it's been really good. We've made a lot of really good progress making the weapons feel amazing. Big thing as well, leaning into manufacturer identity, right? If you've got a bearing rifle, you expect that to be sensible. You've got a Castak arms rifle, you kind of want that to be crazy, you know. You almost refer to it to being a bit more what you'd expect from like a Soviet weapon, right? Like in 1,000 years' time, like what would a crazy Castak kind of black market weapon behave like versus something like a bearing, which is a lot more military, a lot more sensible. Yeah, there's lots of stuff going on right here. Would you want to say something, JJ?
Yeah, I was just going to say, a lot of it's about weapon personality, like you've covered the manufacturer stuff, and it's just like...
Claro, está refiriéndose también que luego también está el tema de bueno, pues comentando la mejoría de las naves y de las armas, y a la hora de dar las diferentes sensaciones al jugador, pues por ejemplo tenemos una bearing que tiene que ser sensible, fina, ¿no? Si tienes una arma de Castak Arms, pues que sería la versión rusa moderna de tener un trabuco un trabuco que meta la hostia padre, ¿no? Que es la idea de Castak.
Options for everyone to kind of use, and we want to see how those are applied in the PU. So we were looking at like real world analogies of weapons from other games, and just kind of saying like, you know, where does this fit in? Like, what's our first stage of like where we want to aim this thing at? And then obviously we do the Star Citizen pass and make sure that it's suitable for our game and that it feels right. So yeah, it's been a very long process, and it'll probably keep going for a long time. But we've kind of, the first stage is use the tools that we've got. Zach's been doing a lot of improvements to the things like the recall, which hopefully we should be seeing in the relatively near future.
And I'm going to address some things from the chat here for a second. Guys, he said 5 years as an offhand remark. Just pull the time frame of things out. Development of this game will go on and on, even past the point where it's beta, past the point where it's 1.0. The game just keeps going even past whenever releases. Second, for those asking about time frames, when is this, when is that, that's what the public roadmap's for. Be sure you check that out on robertspaceindustries.com/roadmap. That's our best and most up-to-date information about when things are getting added into the persistent universe. You'll find no more accurate information than what's right there. And finally, the views and opinions expressed by Jared Huckabee about the Norton antivirus do not reflect those of Roberts Space Industries, Cloud Imperium Games, or their subsidiaries. And I apologize to all users of Norton who are watching the show.
He is right, though.
Because you have to use Norton. All right, let's move on to the next thing here. Climbing and...
¡Qué cabrón! Dice bueno, el comentario que he hecho, porque antes he hecho un comentario desgraciado sobre el Norton Antivirus. Y dice, es que lo tengo que parar porque me está descojonando ya. Dice Jared, bueno, que sepáis que ningún comentario que ha hecho Jared Huckabee acerca de Norton Antivirus tiene que ver con la compañía. Y espero que ningún usuario de Norton Antivirus se vea afectado por este comentario, porque bueno, al fin y al cabo tienen que estar usando Norton Antivirus, ¿no? Cabrón, chaval.
Mantling right now seems kind of lackluster. There's only certain things you can actually interact with to do these actions. Will it feel more intuitive in the future, or instead of as it does right now, which is just kind of click and go?
So yeah, we're working on a few different things. So one thing is that a ledge grab will be coming at some point, which is like, at the moment you can't jump over a gap and grab onto a ledge. That's just simply not possible. The system doesn't allow for it right now. I think the way it actually technically works is you need the top of the ledge to almost be aligned with the floor. It always needs to find a floor there, so that just won't work, and that's something we want to work on next. There are definitely some general improvements, like I think you've mentioned in the question, which was like, if you walk up something waist height, you should be able to climb it. This ties into a couple of things. So like, there are some bugs associated with this, which actually we found there are some issues when we were going through the CitizenCon flow. That there were problems that were raised that we've noted down that we're going to work on as soon as we get a chance. And then another intention is that obviously everything at the moment is manually marked up for climbing, and it's obviously, with the world as big as we have, it can be easy to miss some of those things. We've got so many locations, we've got a lot of procedurally generated content and stuff on the planet too. Sometimes we will miss stuff, so the eventual intention is that we might be able to do some sort of auto markup, but that is probably, when we're talking timeframes, that is further down the line than everything else, but that is where we want to get to eventually.
All right. Can we either draw weapons inside safe zones to modify them without shooting, or get a space inside safe zones where we can pull these things out, like weapon stores or gun ranges or something like that?
So I think you can do that in the PE right now. Now that we've added the new inventory system, I'm pretty sure if you have weapons on your back and you grab an attachment from your inventory and you start pulling it over, you'll see the attachment points on the weapon. I'm not 100% sure if you can do a swap or take them off from the weapon at the moment, so that is something I can look into and see if we can get that working. But otherwise, there's kind of no good way to get in. Kind of like this other part of the question is that there's no good way to get a weapon out in green zones right now, because we don't have a robust enough system to kind of like have law enforcement come and deal with you basically. So that's something that
Modificar armas en zonas de armisticio, de momento solo se puede hacer a través del inventario, si la tienes en la espalda equipada y se puede modificar, lo sabéis, pero bueno, ahora mismo no tenemos una forma de poder sacar el arma o tener un banco de trabajo en el que tal, porque preguntaban por ahí. De momento los sistemas son primitivos para poder conseguir ese tipo de cosas, ¿no? Así que es un tema.
Lots of questions in the chat about non-lethal, things like tasers or batons, stuff like that. What can you tell us about your thoughts about non-lethal weapons?
So we know we 100% need them for professions like bounty hunting, and even people who want to, or if they get into a situation where they are almost like under attack and they want to kind of almost have a more passive solution, they have an option there. So that is one of the reasons why we made the taser or the stun gun, and we have concepted it. We know exactly what it's going to look like. We've kind of gone through a bunch of that stuff. It's just a case of getting it through the content pipeline now. I don't believe there's too much engineering work involved either. This is a designer saying that, by the way. But we do have the lightning bolt weapons, for example, that we put out a little while ago. They are using the same sort of damage that the stun gun.
Armas de aturdidoras o tasers y demás están en ello, están en desarrollo, tienen que pasarlo a la línea de trabajo del content team, de los equipos de contenido, y que no creo que requiera mucho trabajo de ingeniería, que ya tenemos ese tipo de daño en las armas de rayos ahora mismo.
Hammers, baseball bats. What are our thoughts here?
That's short answer. We do.
I played all of Cyberpunk with a baseball bat.
Yeah,
Legendary difficulty, beginning to end, baseball bat.
I don't necessarily think we'll have a baseball bat, but we might have something similar, like swords, more improvised weapons, like.
¿Tendremos bates o no? Dice, no necesariamente puede que tengamos un bate en el juego, pero sí tendremos armas de ese estilo, espadas. Vamos a tener espadas, chavales, en el Citizen. Espadas, chavales. Yo quiero una espada. Yo quiero una katana en la espalda.
And we've tested it with a few other things, so it does potentially work, and obviously it's a lot of animation work and tweaking work to get it actually feeling good, but you can do it with a two-handed weapon, you can do it with a one-handed weapon, so yeah, and definitely something in the future that we want to look into.
Vale, de hecho, si tienes un martillo que puedas pegar un martillazo a alguien, o sea, algo que estamos viendo definitivamente en el futuro, ¿no?
Rich Tyra, big fan of katanas, just so you all know.
Dice, Richard Tyra es un gran fan de las katanas, así que habrá katanas, chavales.
That's it. So.
Hey, I'm not saying.
I'm just going to say you're going to have to deal with me in the UK for a lot of next year. So I'm just going to needle you. Eventually, you'll give in.
Need to keep you on my good side.
Eventually, you'll give in. Let's switch gears to armor. This is a question that comes up quite regularly. We see this at least once a year on these shows. Will heavy armor eventually prevent players from being able to operate certain vehicles or turrets or other...
No me aguanto. RV, ¿seremos capaces de pegarle a alguien en la cara con una chuleta de vaca de huevos? Le cortas la chuleta y haces ¡pa! En fin.
Essentially, anything with complex controls, say like flying a ship, we want to prevent you from doing in heavy and potential and even medium armor, because if you actually wear those things and look at them, like the glove thickness and everything and how bulky the chest piece is, it would make it very, very difficult to try and fly in something like that. So totally be able to do it with light armor on, but the expectation is you should be able to remove that and store it before you get into a cockpit or you get into a seat on one of the larger ships. And there should be options on at least the very large majority of those ships to be able to store armor somewhere convenient, that if you are in a situation where it's like, hey, I looted this heavy armor and I want to get back to my ship,
necesito hacer esto, menos mal que estamos aquí porque
the expect is we want to prevent you from doing in heavy.
Are supposed to get into and operate.
So funnily enough, this was actually something we talked a little bit about today, so that's good timing. Essentially, anything with complex controls, say like flying a ship, we want to prevent you from doing in heavy and potential and even medium armor, because if you actually...
Cualquier tipo de asiento que tenga controles complicados, sea un asiento de piloto o por ejemplo tal, quieren prevenir que podamos utilizar armaduras pesadas o incluso medias. Y además nos indican ahora que todas las naves o la mayoría de naves deberían de tener algún espacio para poder nosotros almacenar nuestra armadura para luego sentarnos en el piloto.
Store it before you get into a cockpit or you get into a seat on one of the larger ships. And there should be options on at least the very large majority of those ships to be able to store armor somewhere convenient, that if you are in a situation where it's like, hey, I looted this heavy armor and I want to get back in my ship, I've got somewhere to put it, as long as you've not stored, like 50,000 med pens in there, like I know some of you like to do. Yeah, that's basically the idea. And there are obviously benefits between light, medium, and heavy. like light, you're obviously moving around a lot faster, but you're a lot more vulnerable in things like combat. Whereas heavy is a lot more combat focused, and there are downsides like not being able to fly a ship. So you're factoring in things like weight, stealth, speed, protection, and so on, and even ability-related things like being able to fly.
Okay. Beckett's
Vale, están diciendo que la diferencia fundamental entre las armaduras sería ligera, velocidad y tal, pesada, la mejor preparada para el combate, pero tiene contrapartidas como que no podrás volar en una nave con esa armadura, ¿no?
how that's going, where we're at with that?
Sure, so we're progressing. We're kind of, really feeling out what kind of stats they should have. So there'd be 4 archetypes is what we have planned. There'd be combat, specialist, utilitarian, and support. Combat is, your soldier. It's good at combat. It would be poor at exploration, that kind of thing. Specialist, that's more of your bounty hunter, assassination role. It's going to be stealthy. It's still going to be doing good damage and mitigation, but not as much as combat. Utilitarian, that's your exploration suit. It'll be good temperature ranges, good pressure, that kind of thing. Good inventory size as well for you to start throwing stuff on your back or in pockets, whatever. And then support, it's really good at power generation, which is more for when armors have power, that kind of thing. But it would be like players could give you magazines that you could charge up, that kind of thing. I think it's got double.
Vale, quieren meter diferentes tipos de arquetipos de armaduras, en el sentido que tenemos armaduras especializadas en combate, pues realizadas para el combate, obviamente, armaduras de utilidad. Utilidad puede ser pues roles de asesinato, roles de sigilo, roles de exploración que tengan más capacidad de carga. Luego pues habrá el arquetipo de support, que pues de apoyo, que pues te podrá proveer con munición y otro tipo de cosas.
Stuff, which is basically not going to be, it's quite a big undertaking to get that working on the armor. And that's not to say we have to wait for that to go in. We just need enough upside and downside on each and get that going before we can actually roll this change out. So people are going to start seeing some differences between all the different armors.
We've only got 5 minutes left, so let's do some lightning round. Let's see if this...
Aparte de eso, harán más chicha, en plan de que realmente cada armadura pues tendrá sus cositas, ¿no? Querrán llegar al detalle de que cada cosa pues cada armadura pues tenga alguna cosita que las distinga, ¿no?
Stamina, dehydration, etc.
Okay, so we're doing speed answers. Kind of links into what we just said. Some of it's already in. Stamina difference is there already. So if you're wearing heavier armor, your stamina is going to drain quicker as you're running around or sprinting. So light loadouts can sprint double the distance that say a heavy can, for example, and that kind of indirectly affects hunger and thirst as you're moving around, because you're going to be running for longer because you're going slower. But obviously this is something we keep evaluating as we go. As more and more things are added to the active status system, we need to take things like this in mind.
Will loot boxes drop rare items, weapons, armors? Declan?
Yes, kind of. They'll drop higher quality items, and some of those high quality items will be rare.
Bueno, están comentando que en el caso de las armaduras, pues evidentemente si vas a armadura ligera y pesada habrá diferencias a la hora de consumir recursos que tiene el personaje o las capacidades de movilidad, tanto comida como agua se verán afectados. Aparte, están comentando si los botines tendrán objetos raros para lootear. Efectivamente, hay diferentes tipos de calidad a la hora de objetos que puedes conseguir de una caja.
Okay. So restraints, we are talking about adding stuff like handcuffs that would limit your movement and what you can interact with while still being awake. And sedatives, now that we have the new actor status systems with the drugs, that's definitely something that we're looking into, what type of sedatives could we add.
Están comentando la interactuación de Bounty Hunter, qué tipo de cosas podemos esperar. Bueno, pues aparte de tal, pues el tema de poder tener esposas para poder esposar a la gente estando consciente. Luego también sedantes.
Shield devices, power packs for recharging energy weapons. Whew, let's say Declan.
Yes, we're having profession suits which have specialized backpacks, and they'll link up with the suit, link up with whatever specialized equipment you're holding. It's early days yet, so we don't have jump packs planned right now, but ideas are still flowing through. And we also have modular backpacks.
Vamos a tener armaduras especializadas para profesiones, sí, tendremos mochilas que van vinculadas a los dispositivos que tenemos en el traje y que con la función del traje, y que ahora mismo estamos conceptualizando esas ideas, pero efectivamente pues habrá armaduras dedicadas para profesión, con funcionalidades para esa profesión.
You need backup.
All right. I'm trying, chat. Any thoughts on introducing smoke grenades for concealment and marker purposes? Joas.
Smoke grenades, yes. We're doing smoke grenades for concealment. I quite like the idea of them being colored as well. We'll definitely look into that. We're doing a whole bunch of different grenades that we have planned right now, like EMP grenades and noise grenades and stun grenades and even incendiary grenades. So.
Granadas están esperando, sí, granadas de tipo incendiario, de tipo de MP, de tipo de noise, de nube de ruido, ¿no? También granadas de humo, y están mirando también hacer granadas que tengan diferentes colores, incluso de humo, para poder utilizarlas como marcadores.
Obviously, we've wanted to fill out the more standard weapons first. We're going to start getting a bit weirder with the human manufacturers next. Like, if you look at the Vault weapons, they have all the evolving fire modes and stuff, which I can't really dig into because we're running out of time. But the kind of summary is, yes, we want to do them at some point. We're just finishing out the more typical ones first.
Okay. Any intention to add more FPS gadgets, things like deployable shields or sentries?
Yes. A lot more gadgets are going to be added. Like we have currently, we're working on something like different types of mines, like proximity mine and laser trip mine. So you could basically, mine up your ship so no one comes and steals it, or Deployable Shields, yes, we're also working on that, and
El tema de los tipos de disparos, que primero están haciendo lo que es los disparos básicos, pero habrá más modos de disparos en el futuro. También están hablando de utilidades para el combate, minas, también escudos desplegables, incluso pues poder atacar una base con un escudo de frente también, el poder llevar un escudo y tal, todo eso están investigándolo.
Turrets are also in the work.
Torretas desplegables también están puestas en el papel, ¿no?
Knocked down, JJ.
Yes.
Mierda.
Some resistance to knockdown while crack.
The riot shield dude at the front, and then everyone hunkering down behind him. Yeah, deployable turrets are also in the works.
Right. Can we please get some resistance to knockdown while crouched? I'm already knocked down, JJ.
Yes.
Night vision goggles have been mentioned a lot on Spectrum. We talked about it with the UI team about 2 weeks ago. Anything you can tell us about night vision?
So, I mean, like, we've got some kind of we've got different scope features planned for the future. So, like, different manufacturers are basically have different tech levels. Like, we want to do things like infrared, night vision, like other features. Like, some of we'll even call out targets like based off like your FPS radar and scanning stuff. And then this also ties into a little bit into the different visors on different helmets for different suits.
Seremos capaces de poder tener resistencia a los stuns con algo o lo que sea, al aturdido y así. Podremos también tener algún tipo de visión nocturna. ¿Qué pasa con la visión nocturna? Sí, diferentes fabricantes irán evolucionando en diferentes tipos de tecnologías. Visión nocturna, visión térmica, localizar objetivos mediante el radar, diferentes tipos de visores según los cascos y las marcas.
Regular clothing, things not like flight suits. Want to walk around with my pistol?
I'm not going to be committal to this because I've been talking about this with the character art team, and it's something that we want to do. So if I say equip a pistol, I then get a holster for my pistol on my clothing. I know people really, really, really want functional clothing, and it's something that I've been talking with Todd and people about in terms of we want to move into a direction where clothing is more useful because people want to use it. This obviously ties into that. So it's like holsters, bandoliers, things like that. Seeing how far we can go without creating too much work for our character artists.
El tema de que la ropa sea más funcional de lo que es ahora, sí. Estamos hablando con el equipo de diseño para que las armaduras, para que los ropajes tengan más utilidades y demás. Finalmente está diciendo del Titan Suit, ha dicho así que nos hemos quedado sin tiempo, hasta luego.
Day this year he's back on select days. I don't know which ones. Just important. I don't want you out there just looking for Jax every single day. He's got a different schedule this year. So be sure to check out the website to find out when and where you can see Jax, and enjoy your IAE on Microtech. Jump in and see all kinds of new stuff like the recently revealed Spartan. All armored personnel carrier. I forgot what APC stood for a second. And a couple other things. And be sure you save a little something in the gas tank for Mist Day. Mist Day is... So for Star Citizen Live first person features, that was JJ, that's Declan, that's Zach, that's Joas. The answer for the Titan suit is that eventually, guys, it's not anytime soon. It's a ways. This is Star Citizen Live. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Thanks for having us.
Buen Star Citizen Live, chavales. Muchas
It's gotta be a
cosas.
Titan suit question. Ever since Sean mentioned it, Sean mentioned it that one time, I want to wring his neck every time.
Sean's a troublemaker. Really is.
Dice discolando al final, cada vez que alguien menciona el Titan Suit me da ganas de agarrar el cuello y estrangularlo. Cada vez que hacemos algo relacionado con el combate siempre preguntan por el famoso Titan Suit. Dice que el Titan Suit, que bueno, que con calma, que queda tiempo y tal, y que disfrutemos del IAE y que el día de Miss, que gordo pepino, tal y cual. Y que bueno, el Anvil Esparta también que está ahí. Por fin, chavales. Por fin hemos cumplido ya esta parte de todas las noticias, el día de Anvil. A jugar, joder. A jugar. A ver, un segundo. Voy a hablar con a ver. ¿Cómo...? Redeemer.
La
Hawk. Hawk.
Me acabo de
Joder.
levantar de la siesta, así que...
Que, madre mía, chavales, qué locura, ¿no? De cuántas cosas hoy, tío. Uf, Dios mío.
Resumencito